Our next question is from Dana. Some permaculture sources recommend observing a site for at least a year to see how conditions change over that period. However, I don't think I have so much time for observation. If I design for a site for a client, what would be some of the best practice advice to get to know a site as well as possible in a short time span? Can anything substitute for the long-term observation? Well, yeah, today we have meteorological advice that gives you very accurate information. We're going to teach you to read wind shear for local wind events that might vary a bit. We're going to teach you to observe the landscape so you can see what it's like. But actually, you start off with water access structures before zones. So water is very constant. It sits at contour and soaks in at right angle to contour. It moves across the landscape at right angle to contour. We want to see the options for holding water as high as possible, where it's got more energy, coming down to the life-rich systems lower down. We want to see if we can find the longest, highest contour line, which is usually the lowest point on the highest boundary, gives you the longest, highest contour line on most regular boundaries. So we want the options for water. Next, access. Access needs to harmonize with water. And then structural position. So it comes in that order. It's like a mantra. You need to give people a mainframe design. So here, there's a swale running through here, but there's a crossing pipe coming over the ridge point, because sometimes your water pattern can't be exactly where you have access, because if you have contour access and water holding on contour, that's really great. The access hardware feeds the contour swale, but sometimes, of course, you need to go downhill. The next best option is down a ridge line. You might not realize you're going to need that traffic later because the site's going to get busy. Here is a crossing pipe over a swale going down a ridge line, and not far down here there's another crossing pipe over another swale, because again it's on the ridge line. So it's right angle to contour, but it's on the most stable dropping point, the ridge line, which spreads the water either side. So there is an alignment with the landscape. You can see that stuff. You can see it on a map. Now, at the top of this ridge, there's a campsite, which is kind of like a structural position. They're temporary structures. There's caravans and camper vans here now, and there's often a lot of tents. So we cross our swale. Here we have a crossing pipe underneath us. So at this point, it's just a crossing pipe. There's actually a swivel pipe there that releases water on the ridge. We can also release water on a ridge. All of this stuff is mainframe design. Now, if this was a house site, and it could easily be on another property, here at this flat point, we've got a swale all the way around us. We've got a perfect position for a garden. We would start on the smaller zone space, and we would work from the house outwards. And it'd all be very small, achievable situation, something that you can actually see if it's working and dynamically adjust it. Outside of that, you can predict that not far away on reasonable sort of slope ground with reasonable aspect, you're going to have the more intense zone too. So you can work on outwards. It becomes quite obvious. Without a year's observation, obviously you get refinements. I'll go in and I'll do an assessment for someone. What I assess the site to generally be water access structures. And can I work with the client, and can the client work with me? A quick assessment of what they require, what I can provide. Then we can go into a design, and we can work around the design parameters the client wants. Then we go into the implementation. That has a set of orders too, usually earthworks, irrigation, some structures and living systems. But then the establishment over time, it evolves. Now here you can have the long observations. Things change a little bit. There's like dynamic adjustments. Goes through from implementation to establishment. It's pretty well established a few years later. Only one thing left to do, long-term maintenance. So yeah, sure, if you had all the time in the world, you could go a year or two looking at a site, but you don't. People are in a rush. They know there's quite an emergency. In the perfect world, you could spend a year or two looking at a site. but we can design mainframes and allow those evolutions. And that's a wonderful journey, that evolutionary journey that takes you through the implementation to establishment phase. So implementation through to establishment is where you get those adjustments. And that's what clients want. They want you to guide them through the potential journey and tell them that it's going to adjust a little bit. It's going to be part of their journey, part of their story. So of course, mainframe, that's what we're doing. Giving people options of mainframe, they make a decision. That's the way I'd like to go. Okay, let's give you a sequence of implementation and expect adjustments as you establish.